Today we're going to be driving the all-new 2022 Volkswagen Golf R. I'm going to be giving you some first impressions on what it's like to drive. We'll walk you around it, show you what it looks like inside and out. We've got a few changes to this new Golf R, lots of new body work. I think on the outside it looks proper. We have pretty large 19-inch wheels. Today we're on winter tires. We're going to be having some fun with this thing this week. We're actually taking it ice racing on a frozen lake later this weekend. So that'll be a good time. We'll test out drift mode, turn everything off, get this thing really sideways. The Golf R that we have today has the 7-speed dual clutch gearbox. It makes 315 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. Let's start off by showing you around this new interior. So we drove the new GTI a few months ago, and I honestly wasn't a fan of a lot of the capacitive touch controls, the infotainment. I still don't love it. We'll talk about that more later, but the more time I've spent with this, the more usable it's become to me. So we've got really nice bucket seats. There's a nice R logo right here. They're very well bolstered. We've got all of our seat memory controls down here. You can see there's a little bit of ambient lighting too. Blue accents under the dash, under the door panels here. Lots of space here to put cups and water bottles, stuff like that. A little bit plastic heavy on the bottom of the door cards. Same with the back here. Let's unlock this. We just washed this, so there's lots of ice in the door hinges. We've got a pretty usable back seat space. I think if you're under 6 foot, around 5'10", 5'11", max, you'd be pretty comfortable back here. A couple pockets here to put things, which is nice. You can put your phone here, something else. You got rear climate control, heated seats for both sides. A little bit of an armrest that has frost on it. That's how cold it is today. Very minimal interior. I kind of like the fact that they got rid of a lot of the gloss black plastic. To me, that's a nice improvement. Before we get this started up, let's walk you around the back here. I'll show you this hatch. One important note with the Golf R, because this spoiler adds some weight, the hatch doesn't quite lift up on its own strut power, so you have to give it a little bit of a helping hand. No spare tire, unfortunately. That is an amplifier or a sub or something audio related. Fold the seats down, take this panel off. You've got a very practical hot hatch. Plenty of room for most people. Oh yeah, that hatch closes with a little bit of vigor too because that spoiler. Look at these massive exhaust tips. A little bit of a diffuser in the rear there too. We are on Pirelli Sotto Zero winter tires. These are, what size are they? 235 35 R19s. Super skinny sidewall. You're definitely going to want the wheel and tire insurance on your Golf R. All right, let's hop inside. We'll start this thing up. Outside temperature 14 degrees Fahrenheit today. Good boost weather, that's for sure. All right, so starting up, we've got wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. It seems to connect pretty quickly on cold starts. This infotainment does take some time to kind of warm up and wake up. We have this little dinky little DSG shifter that looks like it's very similar, almost straight out of the 911 Turbo. Not a huge fan of that from a driving perspective because sometimes I do like to be able to shift gears and change gears down here when I'm got some steering angle and maybe I don't necessarily know which paddle is which, especially with drift mode in this car. But there is a manual option, a 6-speed manual option, and I've heard the 6-speed in this car is quite good. It is a carryover from the previous generation Golf R, so I think that limits the torque figure in the manual car, whereas the DSG has a little bit more torque. I think they still both have 315 horsepower though, which is nice. You've got some quick access touch buttons here for climate control, your driving assist systems, and I am happy to report Volkswagen has fixed this, that whatever you have your driving assist system set to, it'll save that for when you restart the car again. So if you don't want lane keep assist on, which I never do, if you turn that off, it'll stay off the next time you turn on the car, which is fantastic. You've got your parking sensor menu, and then your drive mode menu. And you can also quickly change your drive modes here on the steering wheel. So let's say you're in Apple CarPlay or whatever, in your navigation, you're driving, you hit this R mode, and it'll put it into race mode. You can also select between drift and Nürburgring mode. There's a comfort, a sport mode, and then a custom mode that I have set to steering and comfort, drivetrain and race, engine sound and race. You can also kind of tune your suspension damping accordingly right there. You can hear it's got a pretty aggressive exhaust note there in race mode. You'll get some pops and bangs from this Golf R too. We'll put it back into sport mode though, because that's kind of a nice everyday setting. We have a couple USB-C ports down here, wireless charging for your phone. I do really like this wireless charging area. It keeps your phone well bolstered in there. It's not rattling around too much. It's kind of coated with the grippy surface on the bottom, and it seems like it's always wirelessly charging, which is great. It doesn't lose contact. A little bit of a slot here to put some more stuff. You've got this funky cup holder arrangement right here in the middle, and a little bit more storage space under there. Lots of room in the door pockets to put things. Not as much room in this center area. For how minimal they've made this, they've gotten rid of all the buttons. I feel like there could be just a little bit more storage here too, but it works. Massive sunroof. A little bit of a see-through shade there. You've got your interior lights, which again is a touch button, and the sunroof operation is also a touch button. So if you want to pop the top, you can do that by pressing that, or if you want to slide it back, you just swipe, which is interesting. And we're not going to leave that open on today's day because it's 14 degrees outside. We have a Harman Kardon sound system, which we'll do a little sound test of later on in this video. Heated mirrors, which is nice. We're going to use that for sure. Actual window switches. What a revelation. The ID4 has a haptic button for the rear window switches. This has 4 actual switches, which I applaud Volkswagen for. Let's talk about these steering wheel controls. So, heated steering wheel, 3 settings. I actually don't mind this haptic setup as much as I used to. It's definitely not as intuitive and easily usable as many other manufacturers' steering wheel buttons, or even some buttons within the Volkswagen group, like the Taos that has physical buttons. You still do kind of need to look at what you're pressing, and sometimes you will accidentally press things that you don't mean to. The volume swipe controls are okay, but not great. It's usable though, and I don't have it's not a huge complaint of mine after using and living with this car. If anything, the haptic controls kind of have a little bit of a cool feel to them, and I like the vibration that they give you when you press them. It's kind of nice. In this production Golf R, they seem to be working a lot better than they did in the pre-production GTI that we drove. You can see here we have about 6 or 7 different gauge displays. Those are all customizable. You can go in here, select what you want to show on, the left side of your screen. On the right side of your screen, I kind of like these operating temps and my speedo. You can also select your torque figure, your performance in kilowatts, boost pressure. That's a fun one. Maybe we'll leave it on that. Otherwise, let's talk about this screen, this infotainment. So it's a nice quality screen, beautiful display, very high res, really nice angled viewing contrast. You've got your separate menus. That's the biggest problem I have with this infotainment, is everything is separate and you can't multitask. I think what Volkswagen should have done here is, if they wanted a fully touch interface, they should have made this a bigger screen, a much bigger screen, where you could see climate control and Apple CarPlay, or see climate control and your driving settings at the same time. As it sits, you can only do one thing at a time in the screen, but in the real world, when you're actually driving and using this car, it can get tedious and a little bit cumbersome when you're driving. I think it might be a little bit dangerous too. There's a lot of distracting elements when using this car, when performing just simple functions like changing your climate control. Of course, you can use the voice activation system, say, "Hey Volkswagen, I'm cold," and it'll work most of the time, but not 100% of the time, and that to me is a turnoff and makes me just want to go in and use the system. So like right there, hey Volkswagen, I'm cold. Hey Volkswagen, I'm cold. Hey Volkswagen. Hi Volkswagen. I'm cold. Okay, so it's warming my seat. But all of that, I think, is as distracting, saying that, as it is actually going on the climate control and pressing these haptic buttons to warm up the temperature. So, I don't know. I am of the mind that I think climate control settings should be physical controls, buttons, knobs, dials that you can quickly access. Granted, this does have a decent driving assist system, but until cars can drive themselves, stuff like this needs to be just, don't even have to think about it. Okay, let's go back to the main menu here. We've got a bunch of different settings. Most of the stuff you don't really need to fiddle with. Once you set it, you can forget it. You get your in-car navigation, lots of vehicle menus, lots of vehicle settings that you can go through. You can see your long-term fuel economy. They have all of your settings kind of in this walk-around format. It's kind of cool to look at, but honestly, it's pretty tedious to swipe through. But again, all this stuff, most of it, you're going to set it and forget it. You do have this drop-down menu at the top where you can set 4 favorites. So this is nice. You can turn on your air circulation really quickly. You can turn off your traction control system really quickly. In my GTI video, I said it was about 7 or 8 different inputs to turn off traction control. You can actually make it a quick access button on the swipe down menu, which I think is nice. You can also turn off stop start here. Well, all you have to do basically to set these favorites is you hold the button and then you have the option to select all of these various things. You have a lot of different options. Head-up display controls. Let's actually do that instead of audio. I like that. So head-up display, I can adjust that in terms of height or rotation, and I can actually turn that off if I want to pretty quickly. You have brightness settings. That's nice. We're actually just going to turn off the head-up display. Not a huge fan of head-up displays. So we'll go back to that swipe down menu. Let's see. Let's do a real-world scenario here. So we're in CarPlay. We've got our navigation running. I want to turn off my traction control system. Is that display going to go away on its own, or is it going to stay up there? Am I going to have to close it? I'm going to have to close it. All right, let's try one more thing. Let's say I want to turn on my circulating air. There's a stinky diesel truck rolling coal in front of me. We're swiping down. We turn on recirculating air, and it goes away. That's nice. I like that. Okay, so maybe some settings will put you back into whatever you were looking at before. What about stop start? Can I turn that off? And will it resume what I was looking at previously? It will. Okay. So you don't always have to hit the X button to see what you were looking at before. Not bad. Okay. So I think that's enough on the infotainment. We'll show you some more stuff while driving. Hopefully not crash. I'll do it safely. Otherwise, in this interior, it's all pretty straightforward. We've got a nice looking glove box. This Golf R, it's about $45,000. Before we take this thing for a drive, let's show you under the hood. Hood release is right dead center, just like it always has been. No hood struts in your $45,000 Golf R. That's definitely something that people want to add in the aftermarket. Direct injection only. Pretty nice engine. Pulls well. A little bit of turbo lag. Relatively fuel efficient. Makes a good noise. Heavy steel hood. Still all steel body panels on this Golf R. Alright, let's take this thing for a drive. Get some street driving impressions. I'm really looking forward to ice racing this weekend. Last time we went out ice racing, we had a Focus RS with a drift stick. And that just reminds me how much I miss a handbrake in these cars. It just, I think, kind of sucks a little bit of the hot hatch fun out of it. You can't get many cars anymore with a handbrake. I think the Veloster N is kind of one of the last front-wheel drive hot hatches that has that available. Bit of a shame. So anyway, here we are though. We've got a nice all-wheel drive system. Put us into drive, and off we go. Before we get started with today's drive, I would like to thank our sponsor for this video, Phantom Wallet. This is my daily wallet. It's a well-engineered product that I really have enjoyed using the last year or so. This is the Phantom R. It's their higher-end model. You can bolt on a number of different attachments to the back. This is the key holder attachment, and I really like this because it kind of combines everything that I need out of my wallet. I can hold my keys, I can have a money clip on the other side that I bolt on, hold some cash, and I can fan out all my cards like this. There are a number of different finishes, color choices, card capacities, pretty much customizable to anything that you need. Check them out at phantomwallet.com and use the code TOPHER for 10% off your order. This is a really refined, really nicely tuned dual clutch. It's almost too good. It's a little bit boring. We're just in normal comfort mode right now. At night, had a little bit of difficulty adjusting the gauge brightness. During the day, it doesn't seem to really do a whole lot. But you do have that drop-down menu with a slider right there. So let's play around with these drive modes just a little bit. I think we're gonna hit an entrance ramp here soon, so let's go into sport mode. This is a single or a double press button, so you can single press it for changes to different drive modes individually, or let's say you're just cruising along, you double press, you hold down a little bit harder, and it'll put you straight into race mode. And then in race, you have the option for drift mode, which will turn off everything and you can get a little bit sideways, or the special Nürburgring mode, which has softer damping, but a really aggressive tune for the transmission and engine. Drift mode is interesting because this is a 50-50 torque split all-wheel drive system, and drift mode will put all of that power in the rear, 50% of it, to the one side that will kick the tail out, which is kind of neat. Excited to see how that works in the real world on the ice later this week. So right now we are in drift mode. It's a little bit strange because you kind of go around a corner and get the sensation that the car is kind of just rotating around that one wheel in the rear where that torque is being sent through. We have front end brake torque vectoring and rear end differential torque vectoring, which is kind of cool. All right, off we go. It does allow this car to rotate very willingly, which is nice. Though it does feel a little bit strange. I like it though because it reduces understeer. Let's just go into sport mode. I like sport mode. It's a nice middle ground. Our gearbox will operate pretty much normally. It won't hold revs up too high. We're cruising on the highway, 7th gear, 70 miles an hour, about 2,000 RPM. Should get pretty good fuel economy that way. You can switch between normal drive and sport mode down here on the transmission just by flicking your little micro shifter back. Kicks down pretty responsively too. There's a little bit of turbo lag. Let's put it into race here to show you what it looks like. Oh, the pops and bangs are pretty satisfying. So 3,000 RPM. Kicks down super quick in manual mode. Let's see if we can lock that in. Little bit of lag at 3,000 RPM getting on the throttle, but that's okay, it's not too bad. Will it hold gears? in race mode in manual. It won't. But let's put it in Nürburgring mode. And you can bounce off the rev limiter. Interesting. All things that consumers want to know about their new Golf R. Alright, we'll put it back into comfort. Cruise here on the highway. I like how the gauge clusters kind of change between different drive modes. I haven't really been able to figure out how to get that green gauge cluster mode in Nürburgring mode in this car. Maybe that's a setting that I haven't been able to find. I feel like I've been through every deep menu in this car and I still haven't really found my gauge cluster settings, but that's okay. I actually like this gauge cluster layout the best. It shows your tachometer, it's nice and big. One thing that's interesting is in comfort mode, for your transmission gear, it'll show E instead of drive. You put it into sport, it'll show you you're in S6, whatever gear you're in. But E, I think, is maybe just like an efficiency setting for the transmission. I'm not sure exactly on that. Again, first impressions on the Golf R here today. As far as highway driving, this feels like a Golf. It's super comfortable, steering is nice, very straight and true tracking, not too affected by wind. There's a little bit of wind and road noise, but it's not terrible. Excellent daily driver in terms of comfort in this Golf R. I have excellent visibility all throughout. My mirrors have excellent sight lines. I've got this blind spot monitoring system that works great. I like that it lights up in the mirror. All right, let's put us into race mode, ESC Sport, come to a stop, and do a launch controlled start. Nice. One note, you have to be in ESC Sport. You can't have everything full off for launch control programming. Now can I get my navigation back, please, Volkswagen? Thank you. This Golf R does make some satisfying noises, that is for sure. Gearing is well spaced too. I like that you can rev this thing out a couple times before 60 miles per hour. All right, let's throw us into drift mode, activate, and we're going to completely turn everything off and see what happens. Happy, fun. I mean, it doesn't feel like a rear-wheel drive car, but it actually reminds me a lot of the Focus RS's drift mode. The feel of the car, the way it kind of rotates around on throttle it feels a little bit artificial, but it's still exciting and makes for some interesting limit handling characteristics. This Golf R has great power. This engine is fantastic. This dual clutch is exceedingly good, as it always has been. Personally, I'd still probably be a little bit partial to the manual transmission, just because it's great that they offer that in the United States. And I think we should show our appreciation by buying the manual version of this car if we want one. I don't know, this Golf R has grown on me the more I've driven it. The more I've spent time with this, the more this user interface has become usable to me. First impressions, it's a very frustrating experience. You got to spend some time with this and live with it before you kind of understand what to do. It's still a little bit of a mess. I think, I don't know, I'm curious to see what Volkswagen does with this whole system in the future, whether they add a bigger screen or whether they make some hard buttons for stuff. This is tedious. I understand that it's cool from a tech standpoint. It's, you know, futuristic and minimal and Tesla-like. It's just that I don't think Volkswagen went far enough with this infotainment to make it as good as it could be and as good as it should be. So anyway, that's kind of my biggest gripe with this car. Otherwise, this thing drives great. The handling is awesome. This new four-wheel drive system, this new all-wheel drive system is fantastic. You know, on the road, it moves around just enough to give you that excitement and that little bit of thrill. In track mode here, really hammering around this corner. I think on track this would be a pretty decent option too. We have massive front brakes, finally given the Golf R a proper brake setup. Two-piece rotors. A little bit crashy over some of these larger bumps and expansion joints. Would be nice to have a little bit more sidewall on these tires. I feel like I'm playing a dangerous game with potholes in this car. Ride quality though, even in race mode, is quite good. Let's go into my custom mode. Everything in aggressive except for the suspension, which is soft. This car's pretty fun to drive with the paddles too in full manual mode. Hard to beat the responsiveness of these dual clutch transmissions. And the fact that it will upshift automatically in manual mode in some of the drive modes, I actually kind of like. If you're truly racing and you want it to hold gears and bang off the rev limiter, throw it in Nürburgring mode. But otherwise, I do like the auto upshift feature in manual mode because it kind of takes a little bit of that, the lack of a shifter down here out of the equation and makes it an easier experience behind the wheel. This is a vastly improved all-wheel drive system in this new Golf R. It still feels like a front-wheel drive based chassis, front-wheel drive based architecture here, but it's just better dynamically to drive. It's a little bit more exciting. Brake pedal feel is nice. This is a fun Golf to drive, that's for sure. Let's throw us into special Nürburgring mode. Some people aren't going to like this gauge cluster. I kind of like it. It's a little bit more of a progressive display, race-oriented layout. Shows you how close you're getting to red line. What else can we play with? Drift mode. Drift mode is pretty fun, actually. Nice little bounce off the rev limiter there. You do have to catch it with the gearbox. And it feels like there is still a little bit of intervention there. When you get a little bit of angle out of this car, I can feel things kind of grab down and take over and kill a little bit of the sideways fun. And just because of the nature of this drivetrain too, it is limited in what is possible. This is not a rear-wheel drive Golf R. And it doesn't drive like one, no matter what people will tell you. I do really like a lot of the inputs in this car. The steering feels great. It doesn't have the most feel, but has a satisfying weight to it. It's light at low speeds, and it's heavy around corners and under load. That variable rack does help with that. It's a smooth car. The gearbox is smooth. The paddle shifter engagement is just nice enough. These are plastic paddles, but they feel pretty good. I like the turn signal stock. The resistance feels really nicely tuned. Even this little puny shifter, I like the action switching between drive and sport or into reverse. Little things that Volkswagen gets right in this Golf R, they do add up. All right, so some final thoughts. How can we sum up this Golf R? This is a great driver's car, and I think this is still a really nice daily driving enthusiast option. There's a lot to like here and some things to really dislike. The more I've lived with this car, the more I've gotten used to this infotainment. It is a responsive, fast display, and for that I am thankful. It is a little bit tedious to use. There are some improvements that Volkswagen could make, and there are some decisions that I wish they didn't make. The voice activation stuff I don't think that's really something owners will be using very much. I haven't looked through the user manual, but supposedly you don't have to really memorize instructions for that. You should be able to just kind of talk to it. And I found that just talking to it doesn't really work. So maybe there are some actual things that you have to say to get it to work, to do certain functions. Climate control, I really do wish we had some physical buttons for it, but honestly, once you get going, once you get your temperature set, you can find something that's comfortable in this cabin, no problem. The lowest heated seat setting isn't too hot. The steering wheel adjustments are really nice for a heated steering wheel. You have 3 settings. They don't burn your hands off. They're just a nice, comfortable level. And you can go in and change your temperature with these little buttons that don't light up at night. But I think once you live with this car, if you own it, you know exactly where those buttons are. I wish there was a volume knob. I wish there was a tune knob. I wasn't able to select remotely close to the satellite radio station that I wanted with voice activation earlier today, so that was kind of frustrating. I tried a few times and nothing really happened. Hi Volkswagen. Satellite radio 53. Play Sirius XM 53.
Okay.
And we've got 953 sports. So, that's about how that works. I like this massive sunroof. The interior ambient lighting in this Golf R is really nice. I never used to be a huge fan of the blue accents in Golf Rs. This car I really like. At night, this is a very special place to be. These screens are gorgeous. They're beautiful to look at. They're wonderfully high resolution. I think we probably have about 3 too many different views in the center display, but hey, you can kind of customize it to whatever you prefer, whatever you like. I like the looks of this Golf R, and honestly, I kind of prefer this to the new GTI in terms of just overall experience. I think this is a little bit better rounded vehicle. It is a bigger improvement from the previous generation dynamically than the GTI, I think, will be. It is expensive. It'll be very interesting to see what Toyota comes out here soon with the new GR Corolla. We've got a new Civic Type R coming. So overall, I found this to be a pretty enjoyable package. I do like the way this thing drives, and to live with, it gets better the more time I spend with it. So anyway, we're going to wrap things up there. We'll walk you around this one more time, and then we'll go in and do a Harman Kardon sound system test. Hopefully that'll give you guys an idea of what the sound system's like. All right. I do like the looks of this Golf R. My GTI was white, and this in white, I think, also looks proper. Look how massive these front brakes are. Little plastic pieces there for aerodynamics or what have you. Okay, sound system test. Steering wheel volume controls. You just swipe, you just slide. The audio will lower a little bit when you put it in reverse. And it'll aggressively come back on. So there I just accidentally put us into R mode instead of setting my cruise control. Travel assist. Lasts about 10 seconds before it prompts you to put your hands on the steering wheel. Maybe a little bit longer. It's telling me to take over the steering right now. It is a little bit difficult to cancel this cruise control system occasionally. This is a little bit of a far reach in the upper right of the system here. Let's see how it does on the highway. Race mode real quick. Oh yes. All right, 75 miles an hour, travel assist activated. It's keeping us pretty nicely centered between the lines. Really where I noticed this system having trouble earlier this week was in traffic. It just was staying way too far back from other cars in front of it, even at the closest setting. Other cars ahead of me were going 70 miles an hour, and this was just sitting at like 60, 55. It was horrible, actually. So if you're just cruising on the highway, there's no one around you, this travel assist system actually works really well. It's just in traffic, it's super conservative, and I didn't like the way it was acting at all. So, you know, you should really be driving the car actively in traffic anyway. You need to stay out of people's blind spots. You need to be able to react occasionally and kind of ebb and flow with the movement of things. So that's okay in my mind. It's not really a situation that I'd be using travel assist in, but it is a nice system to kind of quickly take over if you need to do something in the infotainment. Let's talk about this Harman Kardon sound system. It's okay, not amazing, but you know, it sounds pretty typical for your $45,000 Golf R. Honestly, it sounds about like every other audio system in a GTI or Golf R in the past. No real difference. There is no way to quickly mute my audio, which I don't like. You have to swipe down. Oh, and I got rid of that setting. I got rid of that button. So I have to just swipe to silence. All right. Yeah, we need a volume button. We need physical climate controls. Just take these vents, rework them, and give us some buttons right here. Or something. Right there, Volkswagen. That'd be the spot. Take this touch panel and do better.